Welcome to the Explainer. So, artificial intelligence, it's everywhere, right? But what does it actually mean? Today, we're going to cut through all those buzzwords and break down the key ideas that are, no joke, reshaping our world. You hear these terms thrown around all the time, right? AI, machine learning, deep learning, and now generative AI. Are they all just different words for the same thing, or how do they fit together? It can get super confusing, so let's clear it all up. Okay, so a quick heads up before we dive in. We're talking about some seriously complex stuff here. To make it all make sense in just a few minutes, we're going to have to simplify a bit. Focus on the big ideas. It's kind of what the experts do when they explain it too. All right, let's get into it. We're going to start at the very top with the biggest, broadest category of them all, artificial intelligence. Think of this as the giant umbrella. Everything else we're going to talk about fits right underneath it. So what is it really? Well, at its heart, AI is all about building machines, computers, that can do things that would normally take a human brain. We're talking about things like learning, figuring stuff out, and making logical decisions. Okay, so we've got that big AI umbrella. Now let's look at what's inside. One of the most important pieces is a field called machine learning. And this is where things get really interesting, because it's where the whole learning part actually happens. The secret, honestly, is right there in the name. The machine is learning. See, instead of a programmer writing out every single rule, if this, then that, you just feed the machine a mountain of data. And from that data, it starts to see the patterns all by itself. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine you're trying to predict the next shape in a pattern. If you've only seen 2 or 3, it's basically a guess, right? But what if you saw thousands? You'd get pretty good at it. That's exactly what the machine does. The more examples it sees, we call that training data, the smarter its predictions get. And this is where its power really shines. I mean, because it's so good at finding the pattern, it's also amazing at spotting stuff that breaks the pattern. You know, the outliers. And think about how useful that is. In something like cybersecurity, you're constantly looking for that one weird thing, that unusual activity that could be a major threat. All right, time to go one level deeper. We're still inside machine learning, but now we're looking at a really specialized type, a method that's actually inspired by our own brains. It's called deep learning. So what makes it tick? Well, it uses something called neural networks, which are basically computer systems designed to act like the neurons in a human brain. And the deep part? That just means there are lots of layers of these fake neurons stacked on top of each other, all working together to process information in a really complex way. Okay, so here's the best way to picture all this. Think of those Russian nesting dolls. You've got the biggest doll on the outside. That's artificial intelligence. You open it up, and inside, there's a smaller doll. That's machine learning. And then you open that one, and you find an even smaller doll inside. And that's deep learning. Each one is a part of the one before it. You know, it's easy to think all this stuff just appeared overnight. But it didn't. AI has actually been around for decades. Back in the 80s, you had these things called expert systems. It really wasn't until the 2010s that machine learning and deep learning hit their stride. And that's what set the stage for, well, for the absolute explosion we're living through right now. And that explosion, well, that brings us to the latest and greatest, the one everyone is talking about, generative AI. Yeah, this is the stuff behind ChatGPT, Midjourney, all the tools that have basically taken over the internet. Okay, so this is where things take a huge leap. Generative AI, which is built on these massive foundation models, does something fundamentally new. It doesn't just analyze or predict, it creates. It generates totally new stuff, text, images, music, you name it. This is what's powering those chatbots, the AI art, and yeah, even the deepfakes. So how in the world does it do that? For the tech side of things, think of large language models, or LLMs. A really great way to picture them is like autocomplete on steroids. You know how your phone tries to guess the next word you're going to type? Well, an LLM predicts the next sentence or the next paragraph. It's a mind-blowing leap in scale. This brings up a huge question, though. Is it really creating something new, or is it just a super fancy remix machine? A good analogy is music. I mean, every note in a song already exists, right? But a musician creates something totally new by combining them in a unique way. You can think of generative AI in a similar way. It's composing new things from all the information it's already learned. Okay, so we've got the family tree: AI, machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI. But that still leaves one big question. If AI has been around for decades, why is it suddenly everywhere? Why is everyone talking about it right now? Well, take a look at this. The adoption of early AI was slow, a pretty flat line. Then machine learning and deep learning came along, and things started to pick up, a nice steady climb. But then, generative AI hit the scene. And look at that curve. It didn't just climb, it went straight to the moon. And that's the answer, right there. That's why you can't escape AI now. The technology finally reached this tipping point where it's not just some obscure thing for researchers in a lab. It's become this incredibly powerful and, more importantly, accessible tool that anyone can get their hands on. And that, well, that changes everything.
So there you have it. From the big idea of AI down to machines that can learn, networks that work like a brain, and now a new kind of AI that can actually create. We've seen how it all fits together. Understanding these pieces is absolutely key because it all leads to the one big, exciting, and maybe a little scary question. What happens next?